So we do it across all those areas. You are very familiar with Google Search, and again, one of the key principles we try to adhere to there is that search result needs to be relevant and needs to be objective to users, because without that, we feel that over time, they will leave. I also would like to point out there AFS, that many of you will probably have implemented on your websites as a search tool that not only helps you search your site, but also, again, helps you earn revenue from relevant advertisements that can be shown to users as they search your site. Secondly, we want to reach consumers when they are doing research and pursue their passions, whether that's in entertainment. In the US, it would be YouTube or MySpace. Here it might be Youku. Or whether that is when they're looking at newspapers or doing research, reading their favorite blog. Many opportunities to interact with consumers, very often around very specific topics that allow advertisers to reach those consumers very specifically. Interestingly, there are more and more opportunities to go beyond these sites. So you are probably familiar with Google Mail. We have Google Talk as an instant messaging application. We obviously have Maps. We're increasingly getting into the mobile space. And in the US, we're also moving into TV advertising, print, and radio advertising, all integrated in the same campaigns that advertisers can run on our websites. So many opportunities to connect in multiple places. And what's important is as you move into different new areas, that you realize that there is no one medium that's going to be the most important or the only medium that's relevant to an advertiser. So we're all in the online business by and large, and therefore we obviously like to think of online as the next up-and-coming high-growth medium, and it is. But there are other mediums, and it was shown in the charts earlier. TV is still the area where people spend most of their time. Newspapers and magazines are still extremely relevant to people in terms of picking up information, getting impressions on brands, on new opportunities that they may subsequently research online. So it's increasingly important to provide a more integrated approach to advertising across the different media. As an example, it's quite clearly demonstrated, and this is a US research example, that offline channels drive search activity online. So about 67% of people that search for a product or a service online have indicated to us that they actually found out about that product or service the first time offline. So they would have seen something on TV, read something in a newspaper, maybe saw an in-store promotion, or heard it on the radio. And based on that, they decided to go online and search for it. Either search for it directly on google.com or research it on one of the many websites that are in the network and that you obviously contribute to in a great way. Likewise, online search and online research drives a lot of offline transactions. About 2/3 of people that buy consumer electronics in a store have indicated that they already walked into the store with a very clear understanding of what it is they wanted to buy based on research that they had done online on the internet. The internet is the #1 destination for customers to look for product information, for reviews, and do price comparisons. And we think that that's going to increase and become even more important, which means that, again, you have to be able to tie the different promotions and the different campaigns across the different media together. So we're trying to do that in many ways. One way, as we talked about, is by offering more opportunities to also advertise in different types of media. The second way is to try to get more specific in the types of metrics and the types of measurements that we can provide to measure the effectiveness of these transactions. So for instance, if you know that online search drives an offline transaction, how do you measure the value of that? Because it obviously didn't lead to a transaction online, but how do you know it was still worth something? Those are obviously difficult problems. We like difficult problems. So we're working hard on developing metrics and mechanisms that we hope can be a new standard for measuring the performance and the effectiveness of advertising across multiple media in the industry. Which really gets us to the last point around metrics. Metrics are really very important. Again, 50% of advertising spend wasted, but we don't know where. And the online advertising space in particular is the one that has the highest promise of making that problem go away or at least diminish. How we're going to do that is by essentially offering performance measurement in every medium that we engage in, and to offer a range of performance metrics in every medium that we engage in. I know in China, on display and the content network in general, a lot of the buying is done based on time-based, right? You buy per day or per longer period of time. Often it's done on an impression basis, which is obviously a little bit more measurable, but still not clearly related to an actual transaction or purchase. Then you can go from cost per impression to cost per click and start measuring the impact of that and get a little more granular still. And we obviously like to get to a point where you can measure a cost per acquisition or a cost per action, when somebody actually did something, bought something, filled out a form for a lead or anything like that. And in the US in particular, there's a very clear trend towards more and more granular measurement of advertising performance, and then not just in one media, but across multiple media. So for instance, what is the value of having shown an ad on a content page to a user? To what extent does that help that user then go to a search page and actually search for that product? And we've seen very clear correlation between those two. In other words, people that have seen an ad somewhere on the content network are much more likely to then actually search for that product or click on the ad for that specific product online once they do a search for the product. So these are important relationships. Many of those relationships today are still completely unknown. And one of the things that you will see coming out of Google over the next year and a half is more and more opportunity to measure impact across media and within media that are going to help advertisers be more effective in funneling advertising dollars towards those type of campaigns that are really helpful for them and deliver the return on investment. And coming back to the 3 points that we talked about here, we're trying to help the industry get more relevant advertising in front of users. Without users, there's no business for us or for you, so we think it's important to get that right. And we want to make sure that happens in all the touch points, not just in search or on the content network. Secondly, we want to make sure that we start offering opportunities to manage campaigns across multiple types of media, because they are not isolated, they all talk to each other, and they're all related to each other. And then thirdly, we want to make sure that measurements and metrics become more standardized and more embedded in the day-to-day activities of advertisers. So, summarizing, if you think of Google as sort of a facilitator between, on the one hand, users, on the other hand, advertisers, and on the other hand, publishers, we see our role to make these three things happen for all of these constituents, all of these partners in the network. We think we've made a lot of progress with that in search and in the content network, but as you can see from everything that you read in the press, we think there's a lot more to do when we go into the display space, when we go to offline spaces like TV, radio. So those are the types of things that you'll be seeing coming out of Google over the next quarters and years, certainly in the US. And my expectation is that as the advertising industry in China gets more sophisticated, people will start to want similar things as what the more developed markets are expecting around metrics, around multiple media campaigns. And therefore, we will see a lot of these features and a lot of these capabilities move into the Chinese market as well. We're obviously very keen to help facilitate that. We're very proud to have all of you as partners here to make this happen. And again, I would like to encourage you to talk to the Googlers you see here today, talk to your colleagues, your partners here, to see if there's other opportunities to move the business along, to get going on these areas, to move advertising and online advertising in China to the next level. That's all I wanted to say today. Thanks for your attention.